Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, so yourself?
I am well. I am looking forward to discussing The Curse of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
When did you first see The Curse of Frankenstein?
Well, it would have been the same as I watched the Dracula movie, the horror of Dracula. It would have probably been a late night showing on BBC Two, I think.
Yeah, just found it on TV and went from there. I think I was exactly the same. Couldn't swear to this one being the first of the Hammer Frankenstein movies I saw, because obviously back then you just watched them in whatever order you saw them on TV. But
yeah,
yes,
I think it's this. I think I said the same thing with the Dracula one. I think my first Dracula movie is either horror of Dracula or I'm going to forget.
I want to say I think
the one
mine
with the priest and
I think mine might have been Satanic Rites, or Scars. Actually, it might be Scars. I think it was Scars of Dracula.
Dear.
Yeah. But back then it was whatever was on. If the Syfy channel had it on, then fine. That's what I'm watching.
I think the same with this one. I think it's either this one or I think it's Revenge. I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Revenge is an interesting one. I love the ending of Revenge.
The ending of Revenge is fucking awesome.
Awesome ending. But the retcon is like, how did he do what?
Yeah.
But fine, we'll get to that later, I guess.
Yes, we will.
So,
and I think the thing also, I think the thing is that again, I saw this before I read the book, so I didn't have any reference to the book yet.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen the Universal ones yet either. So although I was aware of, every sort of kid kind of Halloween time is aware of.
You're
Karloff's.
Aware of the monster, at least, yeah.
Everyone's aware of Karloff's monster, but I hadn't seen the Universal one, not quite yet. I think it wouldn't have been long after I would have seen it, but
yeah.
So you immediately get used to those certain things, and when you see that, because it's a completely different animal, the Universal ones, and you could say that about all of their stuff.
Absolutely, and I think that there was a big. I mean, the Universal movies, that first run is so iconic. It's so difficult, and I think this movie does a really good job of being like, we're not even going to try and be that movie. We're going to do something completely different.
I think the best thing that happened to them was the fact that Universal said you can't have this, you can't have that.
They owned the rights to Karloff's design. Yeah, they own the rights to the design.
So they basically went, well, that's fine. We'll just do. We'll just make our own, and that's. I think that was a kind of a savior for them.
Yeah, and there are obviously elements. It's still based on the same novel. You have elements like for example, you have the blind man, but it's a very different scene to Bride of Frankenstein, obviously. But we'll get to all of that as we work our way through it. So, of course, we open with a very Hammer. Text over red background intro. More than 100 years ago, in the mountain village in Switzerland, lived a man whose strange experiments with the dead have since become legend. The legend is still told with horror the world over. It is known as the legend of, and then title credits, Curse of Frankenstein.
And I think this was probably the first one that actually did that, isn't it?
It might be. This might have set the template for all the other movies. Yeah, you might be right.
Whether did X do that?
I don't think it did. And they would have had the Quatermass movies at this point, when they at least one of them, I guess. No, both of them I would have thought by now.
Yeah, I think so.
But those don't either, I don't think.
No.
So yeah, this might be the one that kind of set the standard for like, oh, this is how we're going to do our horror movies,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing, it at one point it was like the most profitable British movie ever at that point for a long time.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's a hell of a spectacle.
I think somebody said that it made its budget 70 times over.
Wow.
That's ridiculous.
That cannot be said for any movie these days. That's incredible.
No.
That's absolutely incredible. But yeah, so after that, we start with a man on horseback as he's approaching a prison in the mountains, and this horse, the sound of his hooves bear no resemblance to the speed or footwork of the horse at all. It's amazing. There was like no effort made to try and match that up. It's like, nah, it's fine.
No, it'll work. It's fine. It's the echo of the mountains.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is. But yeah, we hear the bells chiming as he enters through the gate, and it turns out that he is a priest. And he's escorted by one of the wardens of the prison, and he's like, I love the prisoners as they walk through here as well. All the prisoners, they're like, "You're gonna come and yeah." And then I can't quite remember what he says here, but the warden says something like, "This guy is mental. Are you sure you want to go in there?" You know?
Yeah. You sure you want to go in there on your own, sort of thing.
Yeah. And he's like, "Yes, I do." And he goes in and he says, obviously we're introduced to former Baron Frankenstein at that point, and he says, if you're hoping for me to have any sway over any of this, you're in the wrong place, because I'm I think at first he says, do you want to give confession, or do you want
no, he says, would you like spiritual
comfort? Yeah.
Leave spiritual comfort for those who need it.
Yeah. And then he says, I have no sway over this, so if you're expecting me to somehow overrule your death sentence, think again.
He's got like an hour before he's going to go to the guillotine, isn't he, basically?
Yeah. And of course he just says that he basically at this point he's like, I guess he's hoping that if the priest believes his story, maybe he'll get off. But I think mostly he just wants someone to be telling the truth about him, because I guess at this point Paul's not going to.
No.
So he's like, no one's going to know my genius unless I can convince someone that what I say is true.
Yeah. And he loses it. He basically, the priest goes to go and he loses it. And
he tries to strangle him.
Yeah. And
he's a braver priest than I am, because then he's like, "Oh, I won't lose myself again, I promise." And it's like, no.
I love the way he says, "I said I apologize. I shall not forget myself again." I love that. It's a nice little line.
I love it, but if I was the priest, I would have been like, "No, you're good."
Nope. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll stand this side of the door. You tell me.
Yeah, you can tell me through the bars. That's fine. But I don't want to be doing that. Yeah. And of course, he says that he supposes all of this probably started when he was a boy.
Yeah.
At school, and that he always had an amazing intellect. And that of course, when his mother died, as a young boy, he inherited the Frankenstein fortune, which is what allowed him to start his experiments and start his work. And we see presumably the day of his mother's funeral, I'm assuming. We see the young Baron as like he's tried like desperately to get rid of his extended family as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I love the way the woman's there. She's going, your mother and I, we had an arrangement, and he's like, yes, like I completely understand.
I know, and I'll keep the money coming. Yes. Just fuck off.
Yeah,
get out.
And I love the way she's like, oh, look at my daughter. She'll make someone a wonderful wife, and he's like, yes, of course she will, sort of thing. He's like completely uninterested.
Yeah,
in this.
Yeah.
And I love the way Melvin Hayes is really young here.
Yeah.
And I think he obviously worked quite closely with Cushing, because I think he pulls off a pretty good Cushing impression, actually.
He saves the scene because he looks nothing like Cushing.
No.
He doesn't look anything like him, but his performance is great. And his performance really saves it, I think, because otherwise you're like, this doesn't look anything like Peter Cushing. Of course, it's difficult to find people that look exactly like Peter Cushing. He's quite a distinctive-looking man. But the performance, for sure, really saves it. I think he's great.
At that point, I think the only thing I'd known him from was It Ain't Half Hot Mum. At that point. Yeah. So I was aware of him, but I didn't, But there's a show that wouldn't hold up these days. Good Lord.
Yeah.
I loved it. I remember loving it as a kid.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you loved as a kid or back in the day that nowadays, I'm not sure about So yeah, he promises to continue sending the money to his aunt and her daughter Elizabeth, and basically, bugger off Elizabeth and come back later in the movie. They're gone.
I love the fact that the girl in there, that's actually Hazel Court's daughter.
Is it?
Yeah, they needed a girl.
Of course.
Hazel Court said, "Well, my daughter's old enough to be it." So they said, "Oh, well, yeah, she looks enough like you that it works."
Sense. Yeah.
So they basically put. Apparently, she absolutely hated every moment of it. She
really?
And never became an actress because.
Oh no.
She had a horrible experience. Apparently, just didn't like it. So. Fair enough.
It happens, doesn't it? I know the girl who played Newt in Aliens. She did that movie and then was like, "Nah, I'm good. Like, never again." It does happen. But yeah, so he gets them out, and then of course we get the introduction of Paul, who turns up. And he sort of presents himself, doesn't realize that he is talking to the new Baron, of course.
Yeah, he's asking to see the Baron.
Yeah. He's been conversing with the Baron for several weeks about tutoring the young Frankenstein. But of course, Frankenstein quickly corrects him and says, "I am the Baron. I thought it would save time if I didn't explain myself and you thought I was an older man."
And I do love the way he sort of sheepishly puts his head down and he's trying to act all grown up and
he's trying his best,
important as the Baron, but he's he keeps letting slip these little sort of things that just
little childish moments, that
prove that he's not quite the adult he wants to be.
No, but what I like about it is you can definitely see the future Baron Frankenstein in him as a child. Like, he's childlike, but he's got that edge and he's got that
the arrogance every now and again.
Arrogance is a very good word for it. And of course, so initially that obviously Paul thinks it's a bit of a joke or a mistake, but it's all cleared up, and he says, yes, you're going to teach me.
Look, I've got shitloads of money, so...
Do you want some of my fortune?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
I'm loaded, I am.
So, we sort of skip forward a few years, and he says that,
I do like the way, he says, he taught me basically, everything, and then I surpassed him, but he kind of stayed on to help him with his experiments.
Yeah. He says that, he was originally the kind of the student, but very quickly overtook Paul. And then Paul becomes his assistant because, Frankenstein has such a brilliant mind.
Mm. And I do think it is slightly funny that they age up Robert Urquhart to be, you get, when he comes in, he's like smooth-faced and sort of, and dark-haired. Yeah. And by the time he's got like a full beard and sort of like graying hair.
Yeah.
And he was actually 10 years, like almost 10 years younger than Peter Cushing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's got one of those faces though. He can kind of pull off older.
Just about.
Yeah. He manages.
I think the problem is that Peter Cushing, I think he was in his 40s at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And Peter Cushing, because of his gaunt features, it does make him look older.
It really does. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, he like you said, he learns all that he can, that Paul can teach, and then Paul finally sort of becomes, I guess, not even an assistant, a partner, I guess, in their work, and they sort of years and years of work and. Later they discover what they were finally seeking. As we see, they restore to life a dead puppy, and they're obviously overjoyed. And Paul is coming at this from the perspective of medicine, isn't he? He thinks that imagine if we could effectively kill people during surgery, do the surgery, and then resuscitate them.
Yeah, slow down their hearts so that basically they have no, lessens the shock of surgery.
Yeah.
Lessens the damage, and means that they can, get it, and then as soon as they've fixed what they need to fix, bring them back.
Yeah, he's like, we could like perform major surgery, and it would be like life changing for so many people and life saving. And he proposes that they write up their findings and present it. I think there's like a medical conference in the next month or so. And Victor says, "Well, we could do that."
Yeah,
but hear me out.
I like it. This is already, you can see the sort of the gleaming of the devious side coming into play. And he's like, we could do that, or we could do this, and you just think, oh, where is he going with this? And you obviously know where he's going with this.
Yeah, and he is. He's like, well, hear me out. We need to create life from the beginning. We need to build our own creature, build it up from nothing, and basically he wants to create the perfect human being.
Yeah.
And Paul says that's nonsense, and I think he calls it a revolt against nature.
Yeah, he says it's a revolt against nature. He says, and such a thing can only end in evil.
But I mean, Victor does quite rightly point out that what they've just done is a revolt against nature. They brought something back from the dead.
Yeah.
But obviously Paul, I guess, was willing to go so far because he could see the practical applications in the medical field, whereas what Victor now wants is like completely at odds with what Paul wants.
Yeah.
But Paul is kind of convinced to continue for a little while at least.
Yeah.
And he proposes that they get a body because there was a known highwayman criminal who's been hanged for his crimes, I guess, in the last couple of days or day or so.
It must be pretty fresh because obviously the face is rotten and stuff, but the it's fresh enough. I guess.
Fresh enough, and obviously, yes, he's going to be hung there as kind of a symbol to other highwaymen not to do that kind of thing. So, so they go out and retrieve it with a horse and cart, and they return it to the lab. Where Paul, you can already see that Paul is like trying to dissuade Victor already, and he's like, "Oh, the head's ruined, the eyes are missing, the birds took no time for the birds to destroy it," and you can kind of get the impression that he's like, "See, Victor, we can't do it. Let's not bother."
Let's just call it off and go home. That sort of thing.
But Victor's like, "No, we'll just cut the head off. I don't need it anyway. It's fine."
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
he's already got the knife out. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. So yeah, he cuts the head off and he puts it in a vat of acid that will become very important later on.
Oh, that's what we actually did forget to say that when he's talking about making a thing, making a new making somebody.
Yeah.
He says imagine a perfect physical specimen.
Yeah.
With the hands of an artist and the matured brain of a genius.
Yes, which all comes into play as we continue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he wants to create the perfect being, like the perfect human is his kind of goal.
Yeah.
So he then asks Paul to help him with the clothes, to remove the clothes, and they bandage the body up and put it into a big glass tank. And I guess at this point, this is a great point to time to discuss what I think. I love the old Universal horror movies. I love the set designs and all of that. But the sets we get here for Frankenstein's lab with all the different colored glasses, different chemicals. I love the design of these sets.
Well, I mean, it's like we were saying with the horror with Dracula.
Yeah,
it's that this is their first color movie.
Yeah,
and
they've gone all out.
Did everything they possibly could to show off the colors.
Yeah,
I mean, even when you get to like the scenes outdoors with later on with the blind man and stuff.
Yeah,
they painted leaves in the foreground to show off the color.
Yeah. And it's the reddest blood you will ever see in a movie. In this movie.
Yeah, it really is.
It's amazing. But yeah,
I like the difference in this lab and in the the Universal. The Universal lab is this almost impossibly big room, which no idea how they built that room, but it's a weird looking, massive room with all the big sort of machinery and stuff in it. And this, by contrast, it's actually quite a cramped space. I mean, it is a big space in its own way, but it's a believably big space, and it's
believably big, and also it's upstairs, which I guess would limit them like logically. But yeah, you're right. But yeah, so Paul basically again voices his objections, and he says, I don't think we should continue doing this. Like, this is a bad idea. And Victor looks at his hands, doesn't he? The creature's hands. That's the other thing as well. They call it the creature. They don't call it the monster in this film. Again, differentiating themselves from Universal. He looks at his hands and he says, "Oh, no wonder he was a thief. Like, with hands like this, what else could he do?"
As he said, great big clod-hopping hands. Yeah. He said, "What else could he have been, a thief or possibly a gorilla?"
Yeah. And suddenly he's hit by inspiration, and he tells Paul, "Wait here. I'm going to go away for a day.
Yeah.
I'll be back tomorrow evening." But he won't tell him where he's going. He says, "I'll let you know. You'll see." So then presumably the next day we see the maid, Justine.
Yeah.
And she's bringing refreshments in, and asks Paul if the Baron's back yet. And Paul says no, but he's expected any moment. And of course the door goes, and she excitedly says, "Oh yeah, here he is."
She is massively eager to see the. It's like you can tell that
there's something going on. Yeah. Quite clearly something's going on here.
And of course, again, we've got played by Valerie Gaunt. Of course, was the vampire.
Yes, I was going to say it's weird seeing her without teeth.
Yes.
Because she's wearing practically the same outfit, just in some scenes, but without the teeth. Certainly later on, when she's in her like nightgown, it's like she's basically wearing the same thing, just doesn't have the teeth. So, well, and actually, considering it's Hammer, it probably was the same outfit.
Probably.
But of course, she's surprised. It's not the Baron. No. It's the grown-up Elizabeth. And she asks for help with the luggage, and she introduces herself to who she thinks is the Baron. Of course, she mistakes Paul for the Baron. They've been in contact, but only via letter this whole time, so she doesn't know what he looks like. And Paul kind of embarrassingly says, "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." And Elizabeth says that she's here to stay. So this is going to be her home now. Yeah,
and I love the fact that clearly they've been... Her and Victor have been, writing letters for years.
Yeah.
And Paul has absolutely no idea. Frankenstein has told him nothing about her whatsoever.
No.
Not even, not even
her existence. Idea. Like it seems.
Yeah, and it's like, there's some woman turning up, and now she's going to live with them. It's like, what the hell?
What the hell's going on? Yeah, so it's a little confusing. But then, of course, the Baron makes his entrance. He kind of rushes in excitedly, just shouting, "Paul!" And then sees Elizabeth, and very briefly, he's quite charming to Elizabeth. He's nice to her. He says, "Oh, it's lovely to see you," and they'll talk at dinner. And then he rushes upstairs. He's like, "Paul, come follow me." And Elizabeth's like, "Well, I just got here. What the hell?" Like, and he's like, "Yep, later." And of course, he takes Paul up and tells him to lock the door, as he's got something to show him. And he opens the bag and unwraps the bloody sheets to reveal two hands.
Yeah. Not the greatest looking hands I've seen, but...
Well, they're not the greatest looking hands to us. But of course, in context of the movie... Yes. The prop's not great, but in the context of the movie, he says they're Bardello's hands, who is one of the world's greatest sculptors. And apparently Victor heard that he died and bribed the mortuary, I guess.
Yeah, it's exactly that. He basically bribed the mortuary attendant and it got the hands.
Yeah.
And again, Paul is utterly horrified.
Yeah. So Paul now says, he was like, look, while you were away, I have thought it over, and I definitely do not want to do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, fair enough. That's what he's decided. But of course, you know, he tries to convince Victor to stop, and Victor's like, no, I am doing this. And Victor, of course, stays in the lab to put the new hands on the monster.
Yeah.
Or the creature. Meanwhile, Paul goes downstairs and basically is like, Elizabeth, I know you just got here,
yeah,
but I really think you should leave. And she's quite rightly like, who the fuck are you? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know, like her
completely forget who you are and whose house you're in.
Yeah, yeah. Like your mum. You know, her mum just passed away. And she's been brought here, you know, as far as she's concerned, to be with Victor, and this imposter is just here like, nah, leave.
Yeah. And he's very upset when he hears that they're to be married.
Yes, and shocked, and
and possibly he's like, no, it was arranged when we were children. It's like, you know, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously he can't convince Elizabeth to leave. So Paul hangs around basically, mainly where we gather out of concern for Elizabeth. If it wasn't for Elizabeth, he probably would have left.
Yeah.
So I believe we then see why Justine was so excited to see Victor.
Yes.
Outside the lab, they're kissing and embracing.
Yeah, they are having a good old smooch.
Yeah.
And she's completely under the idea that he's going to marry her.
Yeah, which is interesting because, like, if she knew anything about Victor, I mean, like, I would never have believed that for a second that he was going to make the maid his wife, you know. But she completely believes it.
I mean, she's terribly naive anyway, because you know, how many servants are married up, you know, like that? It's a ridiculous idea, and she's completely under the impression that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. She completely believes it. You know, Victor says, you know, Elizabeth is going to be his wife.
Yeah.
And
I love the way she says to. He says something about serving her the way that you do me, just slightly differently, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So then, of course, you know, Elizabeth's like, you know, maybe I'll get to spend some time with him now that he's back. Nope. The next morning, Victor's like, I'm off again. Gotta go.
But I love this bit, because is this the bit where she says about, you know, because I think it suggests that I think it's been weeks.
I think it has. I think a bit of time has passed at this point. Yeah.
And he says, oh, you know, you'll be wanting to be part of my experiments, you know, soon. And she says, oh, you know, I'd love that. I'd love to be part of that. And he takes her,
it's so sinister the way he says it.
Yeah, he takes her head in his hand, and he sort of tilts her head, and this look on his face, the menace, and he says, yes, perhaps you will. And you just think, oh, no, love, run away.
It's not good. And obviously flash forward, Frankenstein created woman. You know, it's like, oh dear. I think I know what he means when he says, yes, perhaps you will be part of my experiments. Like, that's not what you want, Elizabeth.
Christ. Frankenstein created woman. That movie's batshit.
I kind of love it, though.
Oh, I do. I love it. But there's like transference and all sorts of stuff. They go all out on that one.
Yeah, it's a crazy old movie. So yes, Victor heads to the charnel house, doesn't he? The municipal charnel house, and he buys a pair of human eyes from a man who sounds like he's dying. Does not sound well. He's got this horrendous cough, and
I guess if you spend all your time around corpses
in that era,
you're probably not gonna be terribly healthy, are you? You're gonna pick something up, I imagine, from all that those rotting corpses.
Yeah. And
I don't know whether this is the guy, whether it's this guy or what, but Troughton was supposed to be in this movie.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure whether he played a burial attendant or whether he played the mortuary attendant, the charnel house attendant. But his part was completely cut. So I don't know whether they actually got around to filming them or not. But yeah, Troughton was supposed to be in it.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's interesting. I had no idea. Maybe that would have been the role. It kind of would have suited him as well. I could imagine him pulling that off, you know?
Yeah. He played a lot of sort of coughing, sort of grubby, sort of Burke and Hare types, didn't he? For the sort of that. Because I can't remember which one it is. He plays a sort of a body snatcher in one of them, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Yeah. Trying to think which one though.
Yeah, I can't remember which one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes. So he heads back, and again, it's like Paul said so many times he's not interested, but Victor's like, look what I've done.
Yeah,
look what I've done. Look what we got. We got these amazing eyes.
And of course, I think again, we're talking 57 here, and you get a full-on close-up of. I mean, I'm guessing it's probably a sheep's eye or something, but imagine the pure horror of the audience, looking at this sort of like this close-up of this eye, because most of them probably wouldn't have seen an eyeball like that, not quite in that way.
No.
So I do love the sort of close-up of this eye. It's a great close-up. And like you said, he's so enthusiastic about these.
He's so excited. He is like a kid at Christmas. Paul is like he then shows Paul how far he's got with his experiment. He shows him the body and everything, and Paul says this is horrible. His face is obscene and horrifying. But Victor says that
it's not about the looks.
Well, he says that the brain. He says like the brain and personality influence your looks, so that once a genius and nice person is in there, his face will become better.
Yeah,
it's like okay.
I'm not sure it works that way, but all right.
Victor, I thought you were a scientist, but fine. Fine. Why not? And of course, Paul asks the reasonable question. Where are you going to get a brain? Yeah. How are you going to ensure you get this genius brain? And Victor just says, I'll get it.
Yeah.
In that sinister way.
That dark look comes over him, and it's oh, don't you worry about that. I've got plans for that.
Yeah.
Just always forming nicely, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Later, of course, Victor and Elizabeth are in the living room entertaining Professor Bernstein or Stein. And I'm sure this has nothing to do with the brain at all. Just happens to be this world-renowned genius professor, who's come for dinner at the invitation of Victor to spend the night. And we get a wonderful moment where the professor's telling Victor he should work less, and Elizabeth's like, I might use this. I'm going to use this on you from now on, Victor. Because one of the most genius minds in the world says you should work less. Yeah,
because basically he basically says that he spent so much time sort of,
he's wasted his life.
He didn't as they say, stop and look around, and it was it's too late for him now. He's too old and too past it to enjoy what he possibly could have had. And I do love what he says about all those things that he's created, how, we don't stop to think that we give it to other people to use, and then we go and off to do the next thing. Yeah. Never thinking about how those things are going to be used and how wrong, those things are going to be turned, what they're going to be turned into. Mm-hmm. And he's got real regret, this professor.
Yeah.
Victor completely dismisses it. Doesn't really, It's like, yeah, all right, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Just doesn't see it at all.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. And then of course Paul arrives and is kind of like surprised, and I think he probably like I mean, obviously at this point he's probably still hoping for the best from Victor, but I think he's a bit suspect already. He's like,
I mean, he comes through and Victor says, "Oh, we weren't expecting you until tomorrow." It's like, damn, it's like he bloody turned up too early, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can, Paul is incredibly suspicious.
Yeah,
it's like you said, one of the greatest minds around is suddenly at the house.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't seem like a coincidence, does it?
No, I think something's going on here. And of course, later that night, we get my favorite scene of the whole damn movie.
The professor says it's, I'm old now, I need to retire.
I'm old and tired.
Yeah. And he says, Victor says to him, I'll just see you. I'll show you the painting that I was telling you about, just at the top of the stairs. And I love how cordial and sort of, gentle he is about, taking him up the stairs and putting him in front of the this painting, which is the anatomy lesson of Dr. Tolper, is it, by Rembrandt? Which again,
I'm not sure what the painting is, but
it's the anatomy lesson.
I just love how we all know what he's doing, and he's like, perhaps if you step back a little bit towards the banister, you'll get a better look.
Just step back, yes.
And then of course, I guess because he's thinking people might hear.
Yeah.
He's like, watch out, Professor, and then just pushes him through the banister. The banister breaks, and we get that great shot of him falling to the ground. And I always thought, like, God, he was lucky he landed on his head, because that's not the kind of height that's going to kill most people. Like, there was a good chance he was going to survive that, and that would have been some questions.
And I've always thought, Jesus Christ, that dude landed on
his brain. I know.
Even with what happens to it later, I think it's probably already fucking damaged after that fall.
Yeah, I
mean,
lethal injection.
Fall as well.
It's great.
It's a great. I mean, it looks like. I mean, you can. I think that obviously the ground is padded.
Yeah. But even so, man, that stunt man cannot have been well after that.
Yeah,
Jesus.
It would surprise me if that stunt man didn't get up for a few minutes afterwards.
Or had some serious problems the next day. I mean, it's a great shot, but he lands right on his fucking head. Like, head, neck. It's like, oh, jeez. It makes me cringe.
Is it a dummy? It's like, no, that's...
No, it's not a dummy, because they wouldn't have padded the floor if it was a dummy.
No.
Yeah, it's a great shot, but when you think about it, you're like, oh, someone paid dearly for that stunt.
Yeah.
But anyway, he might have killed him, but out of the kindness of his own heart, the Baron pays the entire funeral and also allows Mr. Bernstein to be put in the family vault.
Yeah, interned in the family vault.
Isn't that nice of him?
Because you get that guy said, I don't know what exactly he is, but he says about, the professor had no family and few friends.
Yeah.
And it's very generous of you to have turn him in your family crypt. It's like,
what a lovely man.
What a guy, eh?
But of course, he doesn't even wait. I mean, later that evening, I guess the sooner the better.
I mean, he's chomping at the bit to get to it, isn't he?
Well, and also you don't want it to deteriorate, I guess. So, so that evening, he heads to his family vault and he starts trying to retrieve the brain. He puts it carefully in a jar. And then in his bag. And of course, Paul arrives. He goddamn knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah. And he says, I can't prove that you killed him, but I bloody know you did.
Yeah, it's pretty bloody obvious you did, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, unless...
And of course, they struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. They struggle. And the jar gets broken. And of course...
You think all the stuff that happens later is bloody Paul's fault. I don't care what anybody says. It's bloody Paul's fault.
Victor blames Paul later. He says, you did this. When the monster's basically an invalid later on, Paul mocks him, and we'll get to it. But he says, this is your fault. I was making a genius perfect man, and you broke his brain and shot him.
You fucked it.
Yeah. This is yours. This is on your head, not mine. So yeah, of course he angrily tells Paul to leave and get out.
Yeah.
And then of course Paul heads to Elizabeth again, begs her to leave.
Yeah.
And says that, you know, he's only staying for her safety now. That's the only reason he's there, to ensure her safety.
Yeah.
And of course we find Victor in his lab basically picking bits of glass out of his brain. It's like, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be all right.
I'm sure that wedge of glass hasn't severed anything important.
It's all right. Just brush it off. It'll be fine.
Yeah, just blow on it. It's fine.
And of course he puts the brain in the skull, and you know, he kind of prepares to revive the creature that he's created. Yeah. And he starts the kind of everything up is a storm brews. And meanwhile Paul's upstairs, isn't he, preparing for bed?
That's the other. You don't. It's the lightning stuff isn't what the actual trigger is. It's supposed to be the machine.
Yes, it's the machine. Yeah.
Is it the
and the mixture of chemicals as well. It's like this whole process. Yeah. And Victor goes up to Paul's room. Paul's getting ready for bed, and he's like, "Look, this was made for dual operation. Can't do this on my own."
He starts it, and it's. He realizes that he's
not going to do it.
He can't be everywhere at once. He needs another person to operate the machinery, and so he goes to Paul to ask for help, and Paul basically says, "Oh, you need my help? Good, you know."
Yeah, he says like, "I'm delighted that you can't do it by yourself. That's fantastic."
And of course, that's when the lightning strikes.
The
machine, and it, gives it the boost that it needed.
Yeah. And Victor makes a promise to Paul. He says that if you help me, once the experiment's completed, I'll dispose of the body. Once I've proven my point, I'll get rid of the body. But if you don't agree, then I will continue with this experiment no matter what, and I will find a way, and I will make it work forever. I will never stop. So Paul reluctantly agrees again. He reluctantly agrees a lot in this movie. And they head down to the lab. Now, of course, Victor heads down quickly, with Paul kind of walking slowly behind.
Yeah.
Victor hears a glass break in the lab, unlocks the door, and we get the wonderful sped up reveal of the monster.
It's one of my favourite reveals.
It's great.
Such a great shot.
The speed of it makes him look weird in a really good way. Like the movement's really unnatural, and it's like, oh,
it adds to the exactly that. It adds to the unnaturalness of his movements.
Yeah,
the fact that he's sort of stumbling around, and he reaches behind his head with his left hand. He tears the bandages from his face, and what a face!
It's amazing to think that within the space of like a year, he's gone from like this hideous looking monster to this amazingly dashing Dracula. He looks gorgeous as Dracula, but here he is horrendous. It's amazing. He's got the
Phil Leakey makeup is amazing, because like we said, they were told they were not. Universal would sue them if there was any flat heads or bolts in the neck or anything.
As you said, it's so good that happened, because this design is wonderful. It's unique. It differentiates it from Universal immediately.
And they didn't have the sort of the latex stuff yet. They didn't have the full molds and all that sort of stuff. They tried to do a mold of his face and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And he basically just made it out of like cotton wool and household objects. And it was kind of done on the day.
Yeah.
And he had to recreate that same look every day from scratch.
And it looks incredible. I assume that one of his eyes got knackered, because his eyes are now two different colours.
Yeah.
One's blue and one's brown, which I was like, oh, I thought they were... Okay, I guess one of the eyes was knackered and he had to get a different one.
Yeah.
But there's not a look of love in Christopher Lee's eyes.
No.
The creature does not look like he likes his creator very much.
Oh, he goes straight for him, doesn't he?
He does, grabs him and chokes him. And of course, it's Paul who manages to save Victor in the nick of time, because he's about to be strangled to death by the time Paul slowly ambles around the corner.
His neck to the way he's squeezing him.
Yeah, and of course he breaks a chair over the creature's head, and the creature falls to the floor.
Yeah, and I do like that. Again, it's that sort of it's a staggered response. It's like he's hit him, and it's kind of like the monster's thinking about it before he goes down.
And the way he falls as well, he properly face plants, like he's just like you turned off a robot. He's just bang, straight down.
And again, I love the fact that he got the job. So there was two. They wanted somebody obviously tall.
Yeah, and Christopher Lee definitely fits that bill.
Yeah, and the other actor that was under consideration was Bernard Breslow, who was actually taller than Lee. I think he was 6'5".
Yeah.
And Breslow had obviously been in, like, he will be at this point in all the Carry On movies and stuff, and he played the giant in Hawk the Slayer.
Yeah,
and Cyclops in Krull.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically asked how much they charged, and Breslow basically charged £10 a day, and Lee it was $8.
Yeah,
so they went with the cheaper option.
And boy, did that pay off for them in the long run, considering who they got.
For the cheaper option, basically Christopher Lee had an amazing career with Hammer.
Yeah, which ended up benefiting Hammer more than Lee, I think, ultimately.
Yeah.
But
and I love the story about how Lee and Cushing sort of first became friends.
Yeah.
So apparently Cushing was in his dressing room, and a very angry Lee came bursting through the door and said, "I haven't got any lines. They've not given me any lines." And Peter Cushing turned around and says, "You're lucky I've read the script."
I love their friendship. It makes me sad whenever I see videos of them together. It's like, they were just like, they were made for each other, those two. Mm-hmm. They really were.
They bonded over Looney Tunes cartoons.
Yeah, they loved Looney. Apparently, Peter Cushing used to do impressions of Looney Tunes cartoons all the time down the phone. He used to, apparently Cushing spent a lot of his time watching Looney Tunes cartoons in the cinema and stuff. He'd go watch them. And I think he introduced Lee to them, because Lee thought they were obviously nonsense child stuff.
Probably believe him, at that point,
But he convinced him, and obviously, Christopher Lee had a love for it as well by the end. So yes, Paul says, as they kind of strap the creature down, Paul says, "You've got to destroy this bloody thing. It just tried to kill you. This is crazy." But Victor says to Paul that he's going to operate on the brain and remove the homicidal tendencies. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Sure. But of course, the next morning, the lab is ruined. The window's broken. The creature has escaped.
Yeah.
So Victor and Paul start to search the countryside for the creature. Excuse me. Now, meanwhile, and I'm assuming this was a purposeful thing, because there's a great shot here where we see this little kid come out of the bushes, and then the blind man follows behind him. But the way the blind man moves, it almost looks like the creature's chasing him, until the blind man comes out of the bushes, and you're like, oh no, it's not the creature. It's this blind man. And they're out in the woods for a stroll. And they kind of sit down on the lakeshore, don't they? And the young boy wants to go and pick some mushrooms. So the young boy heads off while the old man kind of just sits there enjoying being at the lakeside, I guess. And the creature appears, but obviously the old man thinks it's his son, or the child, grandson, I guess.
Is it grandson?
Yeah, I would assume so, given the age gap. He says, "Oh, you were fast." But then obviously as the creature approaches, he very quickly realizes this is not my grandson. This is someone else.
The monster is completely bemused by what's going on. He doesn't sort of come straight out and attack him. He sort of stands there and watches him, and he's almost fascinated by him.
It's all because of the blind man. It's the blind man's response that kind of you almost feel here that in this scene it could have gone the way of Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Had the blind man not been panicking and tries to hit him with a stick, and
rightly so. I mean, it's not like he's not making any noise. He's just stood there,
and he's like approaching him as well. At one point, it's like, okay, this poor blind man is terrified. But of course, he upsets the creature. Tries to hit him with a stick and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the creature kills him. The grandson then returns to find his father, with Victor and Paul. I think they're following signs of either the creature or the blind man.
They're following the creature, aren't they?
And
because Paul says about where were the villagers going to meet us?
Yeah.
And Victor says, just across the lake, sort of thing.
Which of course is a complete lie.
Yeah, so you can blatantly tell he's bullshit.
You know full well what he's done. But and we get probably the goriest scene in the film where Paul shoots the creature through the eye, and Victor loses his fucking shit.
Yeah.
Victor's like screams no, and he's like, "You did this on purpose," and like Paul's like, "Yeah, like I meant to kill him. Like that was, he's dangerous, clearly."
Right.
Like he's...
And again, you cannot understate the whole. The idea of, the shock that people must have seen when the creature gets shot in the face.
Oh,
and he
the
puts
blood!
His hands to his eye, and the vivid red.
It's crazy.
And apparently that the cry that Lee gives out at that point was genuine hurt because the blood basically got into his eye.
Oh Jesus! Well, it adds to the performance because it works really well. It
certainly does, yeah. It's an amazing, little.
It's the most. I think it's the most shocking scene in the film. That shot, just because it's so gory. It's like, whoa, okay, like, yeah, he's not well. So of course the creature is pronounced dead, and this is when Paul obviously finds out that Victor didn't inform the village, and they bury it.
But Paul is massively happy now.
Because he doesn't mind.
Dead, as far as he's concerned.
Problem solved.
Yeah, they're going to bury him, and they can put an end to this whole fucking business.
Yeah. So they bury him, and Paul basically tells Victor, "I'm leaving now. The creature's dead. He doesn't need to protect Elizabeth anymore," which was the main reason he was hanging around.
Yeah.
And he's off. But of course, we discover that Victor has already dug up the creature, and has him in the lab.
Yeah, he's got him hung up on a hook, isn't he?
And he makes a promise. He promises that he will give him life again.
Yeah.
So yes, later Victor basically Justine approaches Victor about the promise that he made to marry her.
They're all settled down for dinner, aren't they? And goes to sort of to her to bring the dinner out, and she basically confronts him about her getting married.
Yeah, and he's like, I was never going to do that, obviously. And she says that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh God, Victor's such an asshole here." He's
an absolute prick. Isn't he?
Jesus!
Just pick anybody in the village that they could do as a father.
He's like, pick anybody in the village, you'll probably be right, or something like that, wasn't it? Just insinuating that she's sleeping with everyone in the village. And then of course, she comes back with saying like she knows things. Like she's like, I know things, and I could go to the authorities about what you're doing. And he's kind of like, what do you know? And she's like, you don't think I see what goes on here, Yeah. And so he fires her, orders her to leave the next morning.
Yeah, says leave tomorrow morning. You leave, basically.
Yeah. But of course, Justine's not having any of that. She wants to bring him down, so she heads up to the lab later that night to try and get the proof that she's looking for. And Victor uncharacteristically left the lab unlocked. But Justine enters, and
I feel like because first of all, she goes up and she can see the light underneath the door, and you can see him moving around. and then she hears his footsteps approaching, so she hides
Yeah.
sort of around the corner, and he comes out, and you do get that sort of look as if to say he definitely knows she's there.
Yeah.
There's no way. He's like he closes the door and goes downstairs. So Justine comes out of hiding and goes into the room.
Yeah. And she then heads into the storage room, doesn't she? And she finds the creature. And as she tries to flee, we realize why Victor has left the door open and unlocked, as he locks her in, knowing full well what's going to happen to her.
Yeah, and you get the menace is amazing.
Yeah,
he's just reaching out for her, and she's getting smaller and smaller as she's trying to, fend him off.
Yeah.
And again, you don't see anything. You
don't need to.
Yeah, it's all in the head. It's just there, waiting for you, just in your own brain.
Yeah. And of course, a week later, with still,
no, it's the next morning.
I think it's longer than that.
No, you get the very next morning at the breakfast table.
Okay, I thought it was later than that, but yeah. So Elizabeth's like, "Hey, where's the maid? Haven't seen her around." Yeah. And Victor says, "Oh, she probably just ran off with someone from the village."
Yeah,
fine.
And I love one of my favorite things is I think the writer Jimmy Sangster. He's in an interview I saw of him. He said he loved the contrast of his little. He sees it as a little joke. He loves the contrast of you get the horror of Justine basically being murdered, and then it immediately switches to this genteel breakfast table, and the first words out of Victor's mouth is "pass the marmalade."
Yeah,
and he loved that sort of.
It's a great transition. That
thing.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
That
and
contrast.
It is actually darkly funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah. And of course, Elizabeth, kind of slightly worried, I guess. She says, "I've invited Paul to the wedding, and I hope you're not angry." And of course, Victor says no, he hopes that Paul does come. You can see he's kind of annoyed at first, but then he's like, I hope he does come. And he puts on the smile, and, he says he's got something to show Paul, which is, So, yeah, and then we kind of cut to the evening of the wedding, don't we? It's the reception at the Baron's home. And I
like the there's always some drunken dude in a Hammer movie, isn't there? There's always some sort of
the Burgomaster here, isn't it?
Lovely old
the Burgomaster, just drunk out of his face, practicing his speech.
He's there practicing his speech. Like, to the Baron, and takes a swig. It's like, ooh, to the bride. It's like, and I love the way his wife comes along.
It's like, time to go home.
It's like, we're going home now.
Yeah. That's quite enough of you. So yeah, all of the guests leave, and Victor says he's going to be working in the lab. Of course, like the wedding day, Elizabeth's a bit disappointed.
Yeah, it's literally like we're married now. I'm off to the lab.
I'm done now. Yeah, bye.
Then we have something to perform.
Usually we do something at the wedding, but okay, cool. So Victor obviously doesn't attend the reception, but he comes later that evening. And Elizabeth says that, Victor's got a surprise for him, and Paul must be like, oh, God.
You said Victor's.
Sorry. He's told that Victor has a surprise for Paul. And Paul's like, oh, shit. But he doesn't sell it. He's like, okay, I'll go see.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what this is meant to be. It's either salt or pepper, but Victor's preparing a plate of food and he pours like the whole mill of pepper. I don't know if you noticed that. There's so much pepper or salt. It's ridiculous.
I did notice that. I went and I did think, wow, that's a lot of salt.
It's like, Jesus.
I presume it's salt. So
I'm guessing it's salt, but it's a lot of salt. And of course, Paul knocks on the door, and Victor invites him in and leads him to the storage room, and we see the creature chained up with a shaved head. He's obviously had some brain surgery done on him, or some surgery. And Paul mocks them. Victor orders the creature to his feet and shows that he can follow basic instructions now. He's following very basic instructions.
Yeah.
And Paul's like, I thought you said this creature was going to be perfection, and obviously, where's this perfection? And Victor says, this is the result of your handiwork as much as mine. Like you are the one who damaged the brain. I put the perfect brain in it, and then you smashed glass over it and shot it. This is on you. And Paul says, like, we are done, and he runs out of the lab, and he's going to tell the authorities, and have them basically destroy the creature for him. And Paul, quickly exits. Elizabeth's like, what the hell's going on? And Paul just kind of looks at her and just walks out the door, and Victor chases. Of course, leaving the lab door unlocked.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth enters the lab, and we see the creature break from his chains. And the creature breaks from his chains, and he's kind of up on the roof, isn't he? Looking through.
He wanders off and sort of wanders along. I don't know whether it's a balcony.
I'm assuming it's a kind of balcony or part of the roof. And of course, Elizabeth sees the vat of acid, and then above it, we see the creature looking through the glass.
We forgot to say about the acid.
I know, I mentioned it earlier.
Where he cuts the head off.
Yeah, I said that. I covered it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot. That is a fucking huge vat of acid.
It's almost a perfect size for a human to fall into.
Yeah. It's like, how the hell do you get that much bloody acid?
It's a lot of acid. Yeah. I guess you must buy that in like small amounts and then pour it in over a couple of months. But yeah,
at this point, of course, the argument between Paul and Victor is getting quite heated, and Victor
gets physical, doesn't it?
Attacking, he starts attacking him.
Yeah.
And it's just when I think about to get properly serious. Paul notices the monster, the creature.
He sees him on the roof, doesn't he?
Says, look. So they basically both run into the house.
Yeah. Victor grabs a pistol.
Yeah, he grabs a pistol from a drawer.
And I was never quite sure what happens here. The creature grabs Elizabeth as kind of Victor tries to call to Elizabeth.
First of all, you get this Elizabeth looking around.
Yes, the snooping.
And he's on the ceiling, and you can see him
watching through the glass, isn't he? Yeah,
from the window above, the skylight sort of thing. And Elizabeth is just wandering around, like looking at all the weird stuff that's in this hall. Yeah, and that's he comes down and basically grabs her, and Victor goes to shoot at the monster and basically shoots her.
That's what I was never sure of. So I'm assuming he does shoot her, does he? I was never sure if she fainted and it was just edited weird, or whether he was meant to shoot her.
It's a double barrel pistol, and he shoots
her. Okay.
He goes to shoot the monster, I think, and
misses.
It catches her in the arm or in the shoulder.
Yeah.
And she basically goes down, and then he fires again. But of course, it doesn't do anything.
And that's both of his shots done at that point.
The monster starts coming towards him. He throws the gun at him. Which again is that's going to do a lot.
Oh, and then of course Elizabeth had brought up an oil lamp. That was key information we missed.
Yes.
So he obviously grabs the oil lamp and tosses it at the creature, and the creature is set ablaze. And basically he falls through the skylight in his panic into the acid vat, destroying all evidence. As he said earlier with the head, he's like, in a few hours they'll never know anything was even there. And we then cut, of course, back to the prison, and the priest is still listening to this mental story. Victor says, my life's work was destroyed in a moment, and by the same hand that gave it life. That's a great quote. I love that quote. And then the priest is like, well, I'm done, catch you later. Well, I listened. I said I'd listen, and I listened.
The guard comes in again and says, you've got another visitor.
Got a new visitor. Yeah.
Paul, because if you actually look at Elizabeth, her arm is strapped up.
Is it? I hadn't noticed that. That's interesting.
I'm pretty sure you can see that it's she's holding it funny.
You may be right. I probably just didn't notice that. But yeah. So Paul enters, and of course Victor's overjoyed. He's like, Paul, my dearest friend.
You've come to save me, sort of thing.
Yeah, but not so much. Of course, with the priest still present, Victor's like, tell them, Paul, tell them the truth, tell them what happened about the monster. And Paul's just like, the fuck are you talking about, mate? Like, I don't know what you're on about.
I must admit, even though the Baron's a complete asshole, at this point you think,
feel a bit for him,
you bastard.
Well, he kind of had it coming, really. I mean, valid. Yeah.
It's how it should end. But you do sort of slightly feel like, oh, you're a prick, because you're going to piss off now, and you're going to go off with his wife.
Yeah.
And you're.
And of course he does accuse Victor of murdering Justine.
Yeah.
And Victor, of course, says it was the creature. But obviously the creature doesn't exist. Paul's like, what are you talking about? It's like some figment of your imagination. Of course, the priest leaves. Victor tries to kill Paul, which probably doesn't help his case very much.
It's like, well done. You're really helping your cause here.
Yeah. And the jailer obviously intervenes. And Paul leaves the cell, and we see that Paul was visiting with Elizabeth. And he says there's nothing we can do for him. He's lost,
Yeah.
And of course, you get the impression that Paul's probably going to be with Elizabeth now.
Oh, definitely.
You would assume.
Yeah.
Because he's a bit smug about it as well when he leaves.
He's very smug about it.
He's like, yep. Well, I guess there is an element of like, I told you so many times this was a bad idea, Victor.
Yeah.
But
that's another reason why Paul pisses me off. Because he spends all this time saying, no.
He's like the man of conscience the whole way through, and then at the end he's like, fuck it. Fuck you.
He breaks the brain so that it's fucked when he does it. And then he basically dooms him and fucks off with his wife. It's like,
yeah.
I know it's a sort of just desserts thing, but still.
Yeah, it's like you asshole. And of course Victor's led to his execution as we see that wonderful shot of the guillotine as the credits roll until a random hunchback saves him, swaps him for a priest in the next movie. But that's a whole nother story. But I love that silhouette of the guillotine as the credits roll. It's great.
Yeah.
What a movie! Oh God, I love this film, and I love it so much for just doing its own thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Universal run followed the monster. These films follow Frankenstein. They're very much Frankenstein's movies. He is the monster. I mean, Frankenstein is the monster of these movies.
Yeah. And the thing is there's a different monster in each movie. It's not the same monster in any of them. It's all different, and they are, and for the most part, vastly different as well. Especially when you get to things like I said, like Frankenstein created woman. They're very different things entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, a lot of people don't like this version because of that. It makes Frankenstein a full-on villain. He is, and he really is. And it changes he doesn't have the motivations that he does in a lot of the things. Like the idea that, Victor's doing these things because of his mother's death.
Yeah.
And because of he wants to help people. He wants to create life to stop these things, to do something good. There's usually, even though that he's still a villain in a lot of the versions, there's still that glimmer of, he is actually trying to do good. This one, don't really get that at all.
Victor truly believes that the ends justify the means, and he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like about anything else. He's like, this is like the biggest discovery in the history of mankind. It's more important than any life or anything. Yeah. And that's kind of how he's played throughout the series. He is like the work is more important than anything.
In most sort of versions, Victor's not a murderer. He doesn't kill anybody usually. Not to gain the police. This one, he full on murders the guy to get the.
He
brains.
Does. Yeah, he does. He full on murders someone.
So I've always loved that. I've always loved that the Cushing Victor is a proper villain, and it's, again, even though you know he's a terrible person, you want to see him in the next one. You want to see what he's going to do next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Cushing plays him so bloody well, and as we've said before, you know, in Baskervilles and in Dracula, he's so good at you know, you can differentiate with those characters. They are completely separate people.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, every one of those he brings something different to each role, which is why Cushing is one of my favourite actors.
Oh yeah, and I mean Christopher Lee is my favourite actor if I had to pick one. Incredible. But yes, that was Curse of Frankenstein. And
Robert Urquhart apparently was so appalled by when he went to the premiere, he never did another horror movie. Apparently.
Wow. That's strong
really
to be like, I'm never going to watch another film in this genre ever again. That's an entire genre dead to me.
It's like a lot of the films we talk about, the critics hated this movie.
Yeah.
They really loathed it. I mean, they said it was disgusting and, you know, and depraved, but the audiences absolutely adored it. They loved it. It was completely, you know, it was what people wanted to see. They wanted to see a bit more gore, a bit more horror, you know.
Yeah,
there's a reason why the horror genre is so popular, and this brought it to them.
Yeah. But yeah, what I love this film. It's great movie.
Again, this movie, one of the things is the people that brought the script to Hammer. Was Milton Subotsky, and I can't remember what the other guy's name is, but they brought the script to Hammer because at this point they were mostly a production company, and they made the quota quickies and stuff.
Yeah.
But they brought them this script, and they liked the idea, but they didn't like the script, so they basically fobbed them off.
Yeah.
And they hired Jimmy Sangster to do it, and those two people, they went off and made Amicus.
Right.
They were the founders of Amicus, which were Hammer's direct rivals for a long time.
Yeah.
And both Lee and Cushing were in Amicus movies over the years as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you see it today with studios. I guess back then it may have been less prominent, but you know, they
certainly for England anyway.
Yeah. But in any case, that was Curse of Frankenstein. Highly, highly recommended from both of us. I always like it when we come back to our Hammer movies. We've done a couple lately.
We have.
But yes, we will be back next week with our usual review fare. We'll try and watch some films between now and then. And until then, stay safe, and we'll catch you next time.